Hi there, welcome to the latest news and discussions on the Noah Presgrove case. Shout out to Reddit today. We're going to be taking a very interesting look from some expert to do a forensic anthropologist, the forensic interpretation of Noah Presgrove's autopsy report. As some of you will be aware, I did do a previous video looking at the official documents, and I'll be honest with you, it was quite a mouthful. There was many words and terms used there, medical ones, to the body, the anatomy, which I've not heard before. Now it's time to take a look at it from a different perspective and what they may think. So, if we look on the left-hand side, the person gives background about who they are, their experience, and I think it's quite important is because whilst you get fresh eyes on a case, you may see things other people don't. When you add in a person's background of experience which is relevant to a particular field area of a case, it can help, and that's what we're going to do today. Posted 7 hours ago. Credit to Opening Map. I think this is directly themselves posting this. Yep, forensic background. So leave your comments down below to what you think, and we'll begin reading now. Background: I am a former deputy coroner and trained as a forensic anthropologist. I have no stake in this case other than an interest in making sure the conclusions everyone reaches are based on credible evidence and not idle speculation. What follows is simply a scientific assessment of the injuries described in the autopsy report and analysis of how they were inflicted. I tried to apply the same standard I would use for forensic testimony based upon the information publicly available. So, someone like me, as I'm not experienced in this area, I at least, and we can see how it compares to what this person has to say. I was thinking, well, some of the injuries sustained seems more like a beating rather than being hit by a vehicle or some kind of hit and run. But let's just see. So we start off with the external examination. Abrasions on much of the body, particularly the left upper back, shoulder, posterior left arm, left side of torso, right buttock, right arm and forearm, left elbow, both thighs, knees, legs, as well as on the right foot. Abrasions. I'm sure abrasions tend to be caused by some kind of like friction, contact made with the surface or object. And this person says, these are consistent with contact with a rough surface. Exactly, yes. Whilst the body was in motion. In other words, road rash. Yes, we talked about that. Now, if I do add my own commentary over this, I'm not trying to be rude. It's just because I'm sharing my thoughts as we go along, okay? But it's obviously very critical what this person says and what they've got to share, and it might open perspectives for other viewers. But the reason why it's so important, the road rash, is because there was a commenter recently on my channel. I think it was the person with the like emoji or custom cartoon face with a pink background that was saying, wasn't it that the party house had some kind of gravelled driveway? And to be honest, that's true. And obviously a gravelled driveway can be a bit of a rough surface. So is there a chance that somehow Noah was dragged along that area of the road? Or would it have been elsewhere, such as the highway? Right, that was just a little example I wanted to add in. Anyway, this expert says, however, these are not the deep injuries you would see from someone being intentionally dragged. Well, there we go. I couldn't understand that. If you're being dragged and if there are things on the road, bits of objects, sharp pieces could leave more damage. They are exactly what I would expect to see in someone who either fell or was ejected from a vehicle. This is kind of tying back in with the possibility of my original theory, which I added in. Because at the very start, when I didn't know as much about the case, I was saying, it seems as if that due to some of the injuries that Noah was chucked out of a moving vehicle, and then upon landing on the ground and making contact with it while still moving, the velocity scraping along and then reaching a stop. That was just the idea I put across in the past. Some of these may be from the earlier UTV accident, but most of them sound like they were sustained by the victim at the time of the fatal injuries. Now, One interesting thing which did stand out in the party footage was Noah Presgrove had grazed knuckles, right? Now, was it classified as abrasions, grazes? Kind of. Was that from that UTV incident? I don't know. It wasn't really given much context or backed up, but it's a possibility, right? It ties in line with the timestamps of the party footage. Yeah. What next? Contusion to the posterior aspect of the right heel. This is consistent with a blunt impact to the heel. Weird place to be bashing, right? This is consistent, yeah. Scabbed healing superficial injuries to the hands. Yeah. These are not associated with the fatal event, but may be the result of the earlier accident. Yeah, to the hands. Well, that's what we may have seen in that party footage then. The autopsy report indicates they were superficial and not the down to the bone injuries a lot of folks have described on other threads. These are not consistent with someone being dragged a significant distance by a vehicle. Yeah. I mean, when I looked at the autopsy report, I couldn't recall seeing worn down to the bone. I saw people online mention that, but I don't know where they got that from. There is an important concept in forensics called a pertinent negative, which means something that is not there tells you something about what did not or did not happen. Several pertinent negatives exist in this case. Fair enough. There are no fractures of the long bones present either upon external examination or x-rays. This is important because it tells us a few things. The first is that he was not standing upright and struck by a vehicle. Fair point. Because most adults who are struck by a vehicle while standing up is going to have fractures of their lower legs or their thighs. Because, the lower part of a vehicle, with the exception of a truck, will hit and touch your legs before it hits your upper body, depending on the height you are as well. You get hit, whacked by the side, and then you may roll over or be tossed aside. If anyone is interested in that, I did do a reconstruction demonstration video with actual objects and items to put that point across. It's on my channel. Anyway, right, so where we are now. Most adults struck, standing, fractures to the lower leg and thighs. Additionally, the lack of fractures of the forearms and the lack of abrasions or contusions to the palms of the hands indicate that the victim did not attempt to brace himself before impact. Yeah. Now, if he was supposedly ejected out of a moving vehicle, does that mean he didn't, brace for impact there either? Does a person not brace for impact if it's too quick, too sudden to react, or if they're already dead? I wonder. Anyway, most conscious persons will extend their forearm out to attempt to arrest a fall, and this often, especially in a high-speed, high-energy event like this, would result in fractures of the forearms or significant soft tissue injury to the palms of hands, especially on a surface like a road that is very rough and abrasive. Of course, like a sandpaper situation, rub it fast, it wears away. This would indicate that either he was unconscious or semi-unconscious at the time of the event. Yeah, if it's like reflex, it's just within instinct, within the body to react, and yet if you're not quite there with it, whether that be not being conscious to an extent or even dead, the body won't react the same way. If alcohol plays a role as well in terms of slowing down your reaction time, less likely to do what you'd normally do. His being deceased at that time to be ruled out due to the extensive internal bleeding and bleeding associated with external injuries that he sustained that are described elsewhere. Right. The other pertinent negative here is the lack of what are referred to as patterned injuries. These are injuries that are the shape and size of the object inflicting them. Yeah. For example, a baseball bat will tend to produce a pair of contusions that are parallel to one another with an area of uncontused skin in between. They are sometimes referred to as railroad track contusions. Also, you can see pattern injuries and somebody who was struck by a vehicle. Sometimes you can even actually match up the shape of a headlight or a bumper to the injury. That's not the case here. This is further evidence that the hypothesis that he was struck by a vehicle is unlikely to be correct. Again, abrasion, laceration, avulsion, injury to left oh, here we go with the words, frontoparietal area of the scalp. The injury to the scalp that is described in the autopsy report is consistent with an impact to the left side of the head that involves some amount of force being applied against the scalp. Would it have been catched to cause it to peel? Causing it to peel back, referred to as avulsion. The fact that the injury also has an abrasion component to it strongly argues that this was from a blunt impact to the head. This is consistent with one would expect to see in someone who lands on their head after falling. Okay, I mean, it's not quite the same, but I do remember a video online where a person jumped into the sea, but the front of the head and face smacked right into some rocks as they went into the water. And then in the hospital, basically, there was a massive split all the way down their face, and both sides were split open, and they had to hold it together. So that's more of an extreme, that, but you get the idea of like blunt force hitting something can be lacerated. You think when it comes to mixed martial arts, cage fighting, and there's like a headbutt or maybe elbow contact with the head, it's not exactly sharp. It's not sharp like a knife, is it? But like a blunt force still tears the skin, rips it. Let's move on. The laceration avulsion does not imply the use of an instrument shaped. The scalp tends to tear in irregular curves when a body is in motion during an impact, so the shape of the injury in this case is, pardon the expression, a red herring. If it were due to a golf club or something similar, you would almost certainly see a depressed skull fracture directly underlying the laceration. So about the golf club, I'm still going to do a standalone video about that just in general, because there's some stuff that needs to be covered in regards to where it went, what happened with it, is there any link to the case. I'm not sure if I'll do that later on tonight or maybe tomorrow. I'll just see how long this video is. The internal examination. This victim sustained multiple potentially fatal injuries to his head, neck and torso. All these would have been rapidly fatal within a few minutes at most. So the argument that he was moved or attempted to be revived by a shower or anything like that is not supported by the evidence. Any delay in the accident being reported would not have changed the outcome. These injuries are non-survivable. My question is, and I don't know if it can be answered, but what injury occurred first? Was it the damage to the head, to the back, neck, the scrapes, the road rash? What came first? What I would say is, on the basis that it was like almost like a close to or actually an instant kill, fatal hit, fatal impact made to the head, and then he was already dead, Noah, and then people continued to keep supposedly attacking him, or other things happened to Noah for the extra injuries, it does make you think, well, yeah, that's pretty much overkill. And it seems quite violent and dark in a way, if anyone else was responsible. So yeah, interesting points mentioned here. The bit about the shower, I mean, it's just a theory which other people were suggesting. Me personally, I never agreed with it because I just couldn't imagine people dragging a person's body, dead body weight as well, because it would be heavier than when the person is alive and moving. And you're dragging a body which is bleeding all over the place. You got scalp hanging off, and it just looks a mess. I mean, and a broken back, a broken neck flopping about. Surely people around would know, maybe it's not a good idea to move the person, or I think it's obvious that the person's dead, right? So that's what I'm thinking. Anyway, there were multiple fractures, including what is referred to as a hinge fracture across the base of the skull. Hinge fractures are very common in motor vehicle accidents, falls, plane crashes, etc. In this instance, the injury was likely produced by the same force that resulted in the scalp laceration on the left side of the skull. There are also multiple fractures in the occipital bone, which is the bone at the rear base of the skull to which the cervical spine attaches. These could have resulted from the impact force of, alternately, could have been produced by force applied through the cervical spine being compressed by the torso if the victim landed head first. Yeah, I can picture that right now. Compressed. And when things compress, it can break, it can snap. There were multiple lacerations of the brain, including the portions of the brain that are responsible for vital functions such as respiration and cardiac function. The brain was described as being edematous or swollen. This is a common reaction. Right, just quick question. It says swollen, and just that word reminds me of last night when Jade Millan said, "I saw him. He was swollen, upset." Was that a reference to Noah Presgrove? That really confused me that no one answered that question. Can anyone answer down below? Let's return back to this then. This is a common reaction to a severe head injury, and it's actually potentially lethal in its own right if the patient was to survive beyond the initial few minutes of the injury. However, I don't think that's the case here, as he would have died of his other injuries first. Okay. There was subdural and subarachnoid hemorrhage around the brain. Once again, not something that is unexpected in a person who sustained major blunt injuries. These are just different forms of bleeding between the brain and the layers of tissue that cover it, and the layers of tissues and the skull. The cervical spine was fractured in 4 places. The second cervical vertebrae was fractured at the right articular facet, the joint where it attaches to the vertebrae above and below it. The lateral aspect of the first cervical vertebrae and the occipital condyle were also fractured, and this supports the hypothesis that the occipital fractures were from loading applied between the head and torso during a head-first impact. The 6th cervical vertebrae suffered a fracture of its spinal process. This is a piece of bone that sticks out the back of the vertebrae. The 7th cervical vertebrae suffered a transverse process fracture. This is a fracture of the portion of the bone that sticks out due to the side of the vertebrae. Based upon the combination of head injuries and cervical spine injuries, it appears that his head impacted first, and then the neck was compressed while being turned or twisted by the inertia of the body. Okay. The torso, once open, exhibited multiple potentially fatal injuries. The lungs bilaterally were seen to exhibit multiple contusions and lacerations. This is consistent with what you would expect to see in someone who suffers a severe impact of the chest, such as someone ejected from a vehicle for falling off a motorcycle or all-terrain vehicle. Additionally, there were multiple rib fractures posteriorly on both sides, the 1st through the 5th ribs and the 8th rib on the right. The left 2nd through 5th ribs were also fractured posteriorly. These are consistent with what one would see with a very forceful impact of a victim landing flat on their back. The impact on the back is supported also by the presence of bilateral scapular fractures. Okay. Hemorrhage. Associated with all these injuries, rule out the possibility that the victim was deceased prior to these injuries being inflicted. Additionally, the presence of fractures of the transverse process of the 1st and 2nd thoracic vertebrae, as well as the spinal process of the 4th thoracic vertebrae and the 11th thoracic vertebrae, also strongly support the hypothesis of a forceful impact onto one's back. Other severe internal injuries that could have been fatal include a laceration of the left atrium that produced hemopericardium, which is a collection of blood in the sac containing the heart. A rupture or laceration of the atria is not uncommon in blunt trauma cases. In fact, it's fairly common in car accident victims that are autopsied. The left pulmonary vessels, so the blood vessels going to the left lung, were also noted to be lacerated, and has produced a large hemothorax, or a collection of blood in the chest cavity between the lung and the chest wall. This once again argues for the victim being alive at the time the injuries were sustained. Argues for the being alive. Okay. But if he was to land head first, and that could have been an instant kill, any injuries after that, he wouldn't be alive. But for this example, argued he could have been alive. Was he attacked in another way before possibly being ejected or falling out of a vehicle? The stomach was noted to be lacerated, which is a rather unusual injury. You do not see that often in a blunt traumas unless there is an extreme amount of force involved. His spleen is also lacerated, which produced hemoperitoneum, which is bleeding in the abdominal cavity. I am starting to pick up on a potential pattern, and credit to this individual for one of the examples given. I might mention it at the end of this video, possibly. Conclusions. So what does this tell us? The major takeaway point of this is that these were not inflicted injuries in the sense of someone beating him or dragging him or doing anything of that sort. He was alive at the time he impacted the road surface, period. There's no indication that the body was moved or that he was dragged, as some people have supposed. This death was most likely the result of an accident, although perhaps misadventure would be a better description for a manner of death. See, this is the thing, if it was just an accident and yet the way people have acted at the party, they've not done themselves any favours. And, you know, even if they are innocent or they may know of someone else that did it, just being honest would have cleared everything up, right? But due to the actions, the behaviour, the threats given, there's been some threatening behaviour of those within, it just makes everything a little bit more darker. If it's all built from just an accident which then transpired into appearing as a pure murder due to the reaction of those within the case, those in the case haven't done themselves any favours based off, this concept. What else do we have? The most plausible theory as to how these injuries were inflicted is that the victim was either in the back of a pickup truck or standing on the back of another vehicle such as a UTV whilst it was travelling at high speed. For some reason, perhaps either due to the vehicle swerving or due to loss of balance or consciousness due to intoxication, being drunk, the victim fell out of or off the vehicle. He landed head first and then flipped onto his back and skidded along the road surface. This scenario would explain all of the injuries demonstrated at autopsy. Please see the company illustration for an admittedly rough example of this scenario. Ultimately, I don't believe there was any foul play here. Wow. I don't believe there was any sort of cover-up other than a bunch of kids freaking out over an accident. Nothing that has been presented to me thus far seems to indicate that there was truly malicious intent on part of the other persons present that night. Well, yeah, about that, I think we might need to go over that in terms of the attitude and behaviour of either some of the party goers or more so the parents. We'll get to that shortly because they've not helped at all. If it is any comfort to the family should they read this, I would like to point out that most likely the victim did not sustain consciousness long enough to be aware of his injuries. There was no suffering here. I hope this can bring some comfort and closure to the family. If anyone has questions, leave them below. Well, we just have a quick look now. Moon. Wow, that was an interesting read. So much info that I'll have to read through again. There we go. Helpful, thank you. You state that he was either unconscious or semi-unconscious at the time of the event, but then conclude he was either in the back of a pickup truck or standing on the back of a UTV. So we can surmise that standing isn't an option, which then points to being in the back of a truck, semi-conscious or unconscious. Why would that be in the bed of a truck in that state? Did it have seatbelts? At the time of impact, I think he was unconscious or semi-conscious. It's plausible that he blacked out while standing up in the back, and that seems the most likely explanation given what evidence is available at this point. Also, he could have been sitting on the edge of a truck bed. If other evidence comes to light, I'll revise my opinion as needed to fit all the evidence. Let's talk about his body being found in the fetal position on the side of the road, naked with hair on his buttock then. I don't have any information on any scientific analysis of the hair, so I cannot really comment on that at this point. If someone has that information, I'd like to see it. Well, opening on the official autopsy documents, it said he was naked. but from one of the party goers that got there earlier on, I'm assuming, if the police weren't there already, that Caden saw Noah's body on the floor with black shorts on, from what he said specifically. And that some items were, tampered with. That's what Caden said. This person says, trauma victims are not uncommonly found in a fetal position. I don't think that's a significant point. Alternatively, he could have been rolled into that position by the first of his heads to get to him. I've seen that before as well, because it's approximately the recovery position taught in first aid. As for him being naked, the simple explanation is that he was naked in the back of a truck or in another vehicle. I witnessed similar antics from my drunk friends when I was a teenager and in college, so it wouldn't surprise me if that explains his nudity. But this is the thing, supposedly Noah wasn't naked at the time when Caden Pressey got down there. But fast forward onwards through the autopsy report, it was stating that there was no shorts on him. It was also stated that some shorts were replaced for other coloured ones, and that supposedly a tooth or some teeth were taken away, and Caleb Newton, the father to Jack Newton, ended up coming along and tossing him on the ground. I mean, do we have enough evidence of that? Unfortunately, no, but it's what's been talked about within the community. Of course, that could be considered possible rumour, but these little stories here and there, that they really don't help, do they? Does that negate original poster's post? Oh, what's going on here? Another alternate explanation for the hair is that it wasn't human, and it's a result of contact with hair that was in the vehicle. This being rural Oklahoma, there's a good chance that farm animals, pets, or game animals might have been transported, or even alongside the road. Right, like, how would all his clothes come off but not his shoes? He was wearing mismatched shoes too, and he left in somewhat of a hurry, so I doubt he tightened his shoelaces, so they had to be loose. His clothes didn't come off during the fatal event, so far as I'm aware. I used to be an EMS provider, and I can think of a couple of drunk college guys, I transported who were naked but wearing shoes. I suspect that the answer is that he was undressed of his own volition. And obviously the comments don't want to load that. Right. Interesting explanations. Credit to opening map. It's now time for me to add on my final thoughts. So one key point I would like to make is there is a little comparison between what this expert has had to say for the possible cause of death and how things played out, and how it ties in with what Jack Newton has claimed in the past as well. A bit of a crossover in terms of being on the same wavelength, and I'll address that in just a second. I'd just like to say, welcome to those who are currently watching. I'm not too sure if this is a live premiere or not, because I'm not too sure if I've got a second video coming today. If not, this will be the live premiere, and you'll be able to tell if there's a live chat box on the right hand side of the screen, providing you're on time. Preferably this video would be at 9 PM UK time, so if it is at that time of when this video's come out, then you know it's a live premiere. I'm just saying that in advance with it being a pre-recorded video, but welcome to anyone who is watching, who has watched. Hopefully you've got up to this point, because whilst it's been very interesting to see what this expert has had to say from their opinion, their knowledge, etc., and the likely cause, we just need to add on the additional details from what we've seen ourselves. And now I've documented some of it on my channel already, and there'll be other people elsewhere, and just the platforms themselves where it's reposted the comments, the text messages, the stories, the footage, how it doesn't quite match up together. So we need to get through that as well. If you haven't already, feel free to like and share this video, so to spread more awareness, and more importantly, to spread more awareness of this expert and this I forgot the name for it, Coroner, and the other anthropologist, whatever you call it, okay? Credit to them. So feel free to share the video so that more people see this. And if you want to, you can head it over to the Reddit page for the right reasons to check it out for yourself. And if you want to, you know, leave a comment and ask questions directly to that expert, you can do so on Reddit, right? So it's all available there. You just type in Noah Presgrove and you'll find a page, but just do it for the right reasons, of course. And if you do have any questions or any additional points from here, or you want to react to this video, you can leave all your thoughts down below and I'll respond back to them at a later point. And if you do want to catch up on recent videos of mine, the I symbol, click on that and you'll be able to find my playlist and my earlier video that I did, my previous one. Be sure to catch up on it. Been very interesting in recent time. And now, here we go in terms of my response. So, in terms of certain injuries sustained, and in terms of what damage, what injury came first, was it the fatal one, was it less fatal? It seems to be possibly the fatal one first, and it's like a chain effect in a very short space of time, especially with the speed of a possible moving vehicle, and if Noah is in the back seat or somewhere within the vehicle, for him to end up falling off or falling out head first, because it can happen. I mean, if you was to fall backwards, you're possibly going to land on your back, possibly. If you're going to fall forward, you're probably going to land on your head, unless it's a face plant, but still that can be contact with the head. In this case, like with the injuries sustained, how one fatal injury, serious damage can be caused, which then chain effects to the next part, the neck or the vertebrae. So if you're going head first like that with the ground, you see how it like compresses and just like that finger, and it just all completely goes. And of course, the most important factors you got to take in mind is the height, the fall height, the velocity as well, and is it a moving vehicle or not? Because when it's a moving vehicle, the vehicle's going like this, and if you fall out, you're going to be slung out like almost like a catapult in a way with that moving force and momentum, but then you hit the ground maybe at a certain angle, possibly head first, and then that's what causes that twisting, like how that expert said. So, do you know, like when you get a spear or a missile coming at a certain angle and the person falls out of a moving vehicle that's moving along? I know I'm doing a reconstruction with my fingers. I'm a very handy person with my fingering abilities, so bear with me. A moving vehicle, person in the vehicle, so falls out, slips out, pushed out, who knows? And they make contact with the ground, somewhat head first, bang, just make there, bang. That's the head, the friction, okay, the friction with the rip, the tear, the scalp, and then the neck, the vertebrae compressing, snap, snap, break, twist as well, and then landing on the ground, and then maybe bumping along the ground a little bit to cause the scrapes on the arms, the leg, the buttock, etc. Was that with clothing on, yes or no? Maybe, because from what Caden Pressey said, he saw Noah clothed, well, in the key areas at least. Was there any damage to the shorts? No. But if the shorts were replaced from when Caden saw it and then when the police came along or anyone else did, because Caden wasn't there all the time, he was there for 2 to 5 minutes, had to go back with some of the other guys. And then in between, shorts taken off, replaced with new ones, fresh ones, of course they're going to be undamaged. What about the original black shorts? What condition were they in, I wonder? Because it was described as like white or beige coloured shorts at the scene. But Caden said they were black. So if they had been switched in between, that would be a form of foul play. And with Caden Pressey saying that there was the evidence contaminated, tampered with, there would be absolutely no reason to do any of that if it was an accident. And if people are cowards or they're just scared to say anything, okay? They're making themselves suspicious, of course, first of all, by keeping quiet. And if some witnessed it as well and didn't do anything about it and didn't call anyone, they just carried on fleeing the area or turning back, let's just say. I mean, it would have been obvious. 1 minute, Noah's in the vehicle. Next minute, he's not. Oh, where's he gone? Oh, let's turn around. Nope, they didn't, did they? From the looks of it. So you could say cowardly behaviour there. And in terms of if the body was tampered with, from what Caden has said, he's very confident with that point from what he saw and then what was mentioned afterwards, which differs. So there's got to be like a middle point factor, maybe a middleman that got involved to alter with the body and the scene. And like how that expert says, it looks to be no foul play here, just an accident. If it's just an accident, there is no reason to tamper with the body. You only tamper with evidence or a body when you may be caught up within it or you're doing a favour for someone to clean up after someone. so it doesn't trace back to the one responsible. Let's just put it that way. If a person outright jumped out of a moving vehicle or fell, they weren't pushed, they weren't touched, they just fell. There would be no, well, there shouldn't be any DNA on them from anyone in that vehicle at that time. So because of that, there wouldn't be a reason to mess with his body afterwards. And to be honest, being honest, if Noah Presgrove's body was tampered with, and if someone was responsible, were they wearing gloves when touching or adjusting or taking things away or taking stuff off? Because if they're wearing gloves, yeah, there'd be no fingerprints left behind. So that would seem like more further planning as well. Now, further factors to kind of counter the simple accident and it not being foul play is that when it comes to the behaviour of the party goers, how they've reacted at times, that they can't even get their own story straight with one another. At the likes of Jack Newton saying he saw Noah pass away at 4 a.m, and then at 5:15 was distraught by it and ran to the house and told everyone. And then fast forward to 6 a.m, with some time passing by, he then suddenly acts like he's heard the news for the first time round, is visibly upset, or supposedly upset. You know, which one's true? The 5:15 timestamp or the 6 a.m, 6:05 timestamp? You know, you don't break down once and then forget and then memory reset and then break down again quite like that to that extent. Just seems a little bit weird in that space of time. And then that fishing trip as well, in between it with some of the timestamps, it's like, well, if you know early on, then why would you still want to proceed on with the fishing trip, whether you oversleep or not? Why would you want to continue with that, knowing that your best friend has been hurt fatally, accident or not, right? So that's worth highlighting. Let's not forget Stevie Howard, the homeowner, said, well, if we're such evil people as parents, on the basis, if we were responsible, we would have done a better job at disposing of Noah's body. Who would say that in an open investigation at the time and onwards? Why would anyone say that where it could bring attention to you and make you look responsible in some way? Very unnecessary behaviour, and especially when doing it in a public setting with an open case. And then fast forward onwards with the likes of Jack Newton's brother, recently, older brother, Colton Newton. Colton reaching out to some random member of the public that simply reached out and asked questions to one of the sisters who, I don't know if they were at the party or not, I can't remember now, called Stephanie Millan. And Stephanie was actually at the party because she said she saw who was there and knew who was present, but didn't want to reveal any names. And the general public person was just simply saying, well, it's important to know when considering what happened to Noah. And in the end, certain questions were answered, other ones were deflected, but there wasn't much resistance. A little bit of defensiveness, not answering around questions, yeah. Could be suspicious, possibly, but then the likes of Colton, who's not even related to Stephanie Millan, just probably just friends, Colton ends up reaching out to that general public person saying, if you do that again, I'm coming to get you. I'm going after you. What's with the need of such hostility, negativity, aggression? If there is nothing to hide, there'd be no need to show that much resistance and force. Yeah, it could be annoying, could be aggravating, could be wear and tear on you emotionally with everything that's happened over time and all that bad news from the past, and it's still dragging on now and you're trying to move forwards. But all you have to do is just simply say, I'm sorry, please can you not reach out again? It's a difficult time, or this is not helping. Can you refrain from asking that individual any questions? Go through me. You know, something like that. When people start acting hostile, it's like they've got something to hide. And if this situation with Noah Presgrove turned out to be a simple accident by his own doing in terms of being a bit drunk, not quite there with it, and somehow falling or slipping and tripping and then headfirst into the ground of a moving vehicle, then you can reflect back and say, after all that, for 8-9 months ongoing, A simple accident, yet everyone else made it so much more difficult and deeper than what it was. And I'm talking about the partygoers or the parents, the friends or the sisters, the brothers, some of their hostility towards the general public, Stevie Howard's behavior, you're next. Some of the adults, contradicting the stories. Was it Becky saying how, yeah, Sarah Long was down there at the party around 8 in the morning. Carlson was there. Even Stevie Howard and the other person, I think. Stevie Howard was claiming that she wasn't even there. She was out of town. She said it herself. Stevie Howard, I'm out of town. So why does Becky say that you were there at the party? Someone's right, the other person's wrong, and why are you hiding it? It all links back to if you're innocent, you got nothing to hide, and how Noah died was an accident, there'd be no need for that weird behavior, right? If you took out all this weird behavior, threatening language, and you took away the inconsistent stories by all these humans, and there was a bit more cooperation, and there was more polite behavior, there wouldn't be as much suspicion with those individuals, and it might be treated more as an accident in the eyes of the general public, more so than the likes of right now, considering what we've seen and how people have acted. Fake accounts, fake profiles set up to tell the true narrative without actually explaining it or talking around it. Yeah. Obsessions with white semi-trucks and being hit by it. Clipped. No, don't think so. And as well, you take in mind that you get like a semi-truck, a truck in general, the height of it and where the mirror is, you're going to be down here. The mirror is going to be just above you, if not higher, depending on the height of yourself. So if you're going to get clipped by the mirror, very unlikely. If you got clipped by a mirror of possible lower, smaller truck or just a simple car, that would probably clip you, like maybe the arm, maybe the shoulder, depending the height you are. That doesn't seem to be the case here, really, and it wouldn't explain all the other injuries. Also, what I want to add on, like I mentioned about Jack Newton. Jack Newton was convinced it was either a white semi-truck that clipped Noah, which seems hard to believe because of all the other injuries sustained. It wouldn't really make sense. But the interesting thing is, Jack Newton said, it was the Texas boys, that the Texas boys ended up pushing or shoving Noah out of the vehicle. Now, it's not directly the same thing which the expert has said, but the act of falling out of a moving vehicle and possibly head first could explain the injuries sustained and the order in which they followed in. If you get an idea of the possible order of how the injuries followed in, then it could explain the type of situation. If there was let's say there was a fatal injury to the head, but the first few injuries were actually bruises or some contusions to the arm, the chest, bruises, leg, and that occurred first, maybe on the basis the person was beaten. It could have been beaten here and there, not fatal immediately, because sometimes people want to make the other person suffer. So you'll do all the injury and damage to the less severe, important areas to keep that person alive for as long as possible, and then eventually go for the kill shot and finish the person once and for all, such as the head. When you get the torture interrogation tactics, inflicting as much pain and fear on the individual, but ensuring that they stay alive all the way through to experience and feel every bit of pain. And then at the end, if they haven't confessed, finishing them off for good. At the end of the day, you could have finished them off, put them out of their misery immediately, but that wasn't the the idea. You wanted to inflict pain, you wanted to inflict torture, and that's what they did. In the Noah Presgrove cases that applied there, well, no, not really. I mean, whilst the expert has ruled out a beating and feels it's more so of falling out of a moving vehicle, can it be backed up by anyone else, any other key individuals? I mean, as for the autopsy report themselves, they considered experts as well equally, but that autopsy report, they said they couldn't come to a conclusion of the cause of death. So if they can't, but this expert can, does that mean that the original people on the autopsy weren't doing a good job, or they were trying to cover things up as for the real cause of the outcome? But then again, there'd be no reason to cover it up if it's just an accident. There'd be no reason for threatening behaviour if it was just an accident. There'd be no reason for lying to say whether you were there or not at the house party if it was just an accident. There'd be no reason to come up with all kinds of different stories and different outcomes and timestamps if it was just an accident, right? And let's just say that all the partygoers had no clue of what happened to Noah for some reason, and it might have been an outsider from the party or further afar that was driving Noah back home. Still, there'd be no reason to have mixed stories, maybe to throw some people under the bus, stab one another in the back, for the likes of Caden Pressey to have been attacked and have received over 300 supposedly death threats. Is any of that necessary if it's just an accident? It's when you look at the social media aspect and post-death of Noah, how things transpired online within these party-goers, friends, sisters, brothers, parents further afar, how they've acted and reacted online with their stories, or how they've tried silencing other people. Just like how my videos, there was an attempt to silence me with 10 videos for breaking privacy guideline violations, yet at the end of the day I did nothing wrong, and YouTube checked themselves and reinforced that I was innocent. If there is nothing to hide, then the truth doesn't need to be concealed, and if the truth hasn't been concealed, then it should be an open sight, plain and easy to know. But it's not easy to know with the massive cloud and obstructions in the way of the different stories and points made by people. So, in a separate circumstance, if you eliminated all of the partygoers and all of the social media BS afterwards, and you just looked at the situation with Noah, how he could have fallen out of a vehicle, I would say, fair point. How one injury can lead to the other, and then the rest follow. I get that. You know, the compression, hitting the ground, I do understand. But when you throw into the mix how humans have reacted, right, directly those within the case, it just seems a little bit suspicious, a bit strange in my opinion. Let me know your thoughts, of course, down below in the comment section. What I would like to do now, just to add on, and not in relation to this autopsy specifically, but add on to certain behaviour of some of the partygoers, such as Carter Combs. There is like some repost which were found or reposted onto Reddit, and we'll have a quick look now. You might have seen it at the start of this video before I scrolled up. We're just going to head on over there because we need to follow the theme of TikTok. It's important to check people's social media profiles from time to time to see what they say, what they do. I mean, some of them seem very interested enough to start looking into these Reddit pages or the Facebook groups, maybe even YouTube as well, and lurk in the background and do kind of dodgy things or pass messages on. I mean, if the profiles are public, which they are, then there's no harm in doing so. Now, as for the profile this time around on TikTok, wasn't able to find it, but there are screenshots of the profile with the profile picture in the bottom corner where videos have been reposted. Let's have a quick look at it now. It's probably not as deep as yesterday, and let me tell you something. Don't worry, these are screenshots on Reddit. There are no videos. There's no door slamming. It should be fine. Let's head on over. You should be able to see, posted 1 day ago by Rach or Rachel, shout out to them. Just click on that, there'll be some photos. Are we going to get the banner popping up? Not from the looks of it this time round. User opinion, Carter Combs TikTok. Just checking out Carter Combs TikTok, and these reposts were made within 1 month of Noah Presgrove's passing. What are y'all's thoughts about it? Okay, well, we'll take a look right now. Let me just click on that. I'll zoom in just a second. So if you don't know what a repost is or a reshare, such as on TikTok, is where you can watch a video which is not yours, nor has it been uploaded on your profile or page. You simply watch somebody else's video. And then down below, where it's highlighted, and it tends to give you an option. I don't know all the time, but sometimes. Can you see where it says cars reposted? Normally, it will just say repost. And when you click it, it basically gets saved to, well, it don't get, it just gets added to your profile page, right? There'll be times where you'll go on someone's profile on TikTok and they'll have lots of videos and it could say millions of views. And at first you might think, oh, wow, they're really popular. But then you realize you're on the section of reposting content which isn't theirs onto their page. Do they get any benefits from it? No. It's just like a way of sharing a post to other people so more people see it. And so you can rewatch it as well afterwards. That's all it is. It's not that deep. It does follow policies. It's just like the equivalent of someone reposting a screenshot from Facebook onto Reddit. So it enables more people to see it in the future if they ever go on that profile or page. Hopefully that explains that. The date here, 2023, 7/28. Take in mind the dates are reversed when it comes to the dodgy US compared to the UK, in case anyone from other countries are a bit confused. Obviously, it's hard to make out, but it does say cars, and that just definitely looked like Carter Combs from the looks of it with the hair colour and the face. But why is this so important anyway in terms of the post? Because they look a bit random. What's this, rodeo riding or something? Well, I think there might be certain characteristics and features of these males that she's reposted. And I think that's what people have been trying to put across on Reddit. Now, I'm not going to jump in the deep end, but let's at least look at it first just to see what it's all about. Do we see a pattern? Do we see a trend? Get rid of that off screen. There we go. So I don't know who this person is, this rodeo, is if they're popular or not, but do they have any characteristics or facial features, appearance-wise, looks that are similar to Noah Presgrove by any chance? Let me know. Pretty Punchy, the goat, JB Mauney. Never heard of him before, rodeo, but I'm sure some of you have. Click this off. Next slide. This was the next one that was reposted. Don't know what it's about then. Another male. Any similarities or characteristics to Noah Presgrove by any chance? I mean, take in mind, you could always say, is there any similarities or contrast to, who else would it be? Jack Newton, because at the time would have been boyfriend, girlfriend, right, back then. But they didn't lose each other back then. They supposedly parted ways or broke up more so in 2024, a month or two ago, supposedly. So that wouldn't be the case there. Patricio Maretto. Anyone in the comments or watching right now, if you've got an Italian name, let me know and I'll try and pronounce it at some point in the future because I've got a very dodgy Italian accent. Right, there you go. I said there's not much context to it, right? It's just still screenshots of males. That's the pattern. White males with what, curly hair or something? And then we move on to this woman here. My mom, when I bring home another tall brunette douchebag. Oh. And Cars reposted that. Is that because Cars relates in some way? Just happened that Cars' boyfriend is Jack Newton. Does Jack Newton have brunette hair? Can't remember, but you're saying that he's a douchebag? Just like if you used to link one thing with another. Do you know when people repost content, they tend to because they either like it or they relate to it? And that's a situation where you brought home a guy, and it just so happens that Carter Combs has reposted that because she relates, and Carter Combs just so happens to be with Jack Newton. Is that a dig at him? I wonder. But we need further context, don't we? We need additional thoughts and comments to pinpoint any of this relevancy to the case. So Nev says it's consistent with her lack of empathy and compassion. Right. Ratch says the descriptions and the men look a lot more like Noah Presgrove than Jack Newton. If a guy is super into a girl, they're going to wonder why these reports are of men that don't fit his description, but that of his best friend. Repost, not reports. Good point. I'm guessing these guys are her type. So what does that make Jack Newton then? I guess. I mean, you've only got 2 posts to do with 2 guys. Was there any more? I think you need a bit more for that consistency. I don't know. Jack Newton isn't an unattractive guy, but from what I understand, most of their fights were about girls. Was Carter Combs more attracted to Noah Presgrove? Was she trying to manipulate Jack Newton? Question. Cheap. Almost as if she had nothing to say about Noah's passing. No tribute or anything, unlike BS, Brylan Sweat, IR, Isaac, and others who have made tributes. I mean, not everybody's expected or forced to do that online, but maybe more so nowadays. That's what people do. A profile picture, a post, a memory, reposting old photos of one another. Even if it's just one post to say, I miss you. Things like that. Not everyone at the partygoers has done that, from the looks of it. Ratch. No. These were posted within a month before Noah Presgrove's passing. How do you think Jack Newton felt about his girl posting JB Mornay, who's not only a super hot cowboy that's worth millions, but I never realised how much he looks like Noah. Then you have the video about bringing home a tall brunette guy. Last I checked, Jack Newton isn't a tall and handsome brunette. But is he a brunette though? Because it could have been used more as a dig. Maybe she was more attracted to guys that looked like Noah Presgrove, or maybe she knew exactly how to get a rise out of Jack Newton. She may be parroting the manipulative tactics of someone she's watched her wild life. Well, like Stevie Howard. This is just speculation, but my husband would be like, what the beep if I was reposting men that resembles his best friend? Yeah, you could pick up on a pattern, possibly. But then there are other times where, you could be with someone and then that other individual is really obsessed, fangirling or fanboying, depending on the situation, over a celebrity. And you think, oh, excuse me, am I not enough? But then there can be a bit of jealousy, there can be a bit of insecurity, and then there can be a bit of control. So it can go different ways, right? Different angles and factors. Why was Jack Newton continually getting into fights with Presgrove over girls? Like, why does he care who he hooks up with? Was he fighting someone else's battle? Let's just say. Oops, Ratch, forgive me. I read that a little too fast. I thought the exact same thing. Yes, I should have indicated that these posts were prior to his passing. I realised that after the fact. My bad. I think saying that a young girl reposted JBM because he looks like Noah Presgrove is crazy. If my spouse reposts JBM, I would not think much about it. He was the best bull rider out there. Maybe her ex-boyfriends were tall, dark-headed guys. I don't know, but I don't think Carter Combs reposting TikToks a month prior to Presgrove's passing is not relevant to what happened to Noah Presgrove. Just my honest opinion. I mean, what else could you do? Maybe if you was the girlfriend of the person that passed away, and then everywhere where you looked and everywhere where you went, you were reminded of memories or similarities, or you kept seeing people that looked very familiar, very similar to that person you were with. So like, when you get lookalikes in life, and as a form of seeking comfort, you might repost photos or save them of individuals out there that may share similar characteristics to that person you once loved. I mean, a bit of a contrast, but there is still a pattern in selectiveness in which when you see something and you focus in on it, tunnel vision, just like Ted Bundy, who would kill females of a certain hair colour, and that was a consistent pattern there. Can work in different ways. Preferences, selective reading, vision, certain factors. Ratch, young girl? My daughter is 9. She's considered a young girl. Let's stop infantilizing people who are old enough to go to war. If they had a stable upbringing and didn't have parents that talk about them as if they were babies, they're still sucking their thumbs, they wouldn't have found themselves smack dab in the middle of a gruesome murder that's gained international attention. Your bias is showing. Ooh. Did Jack Newton and Carter Combs break up? Jack Newton's Facebook says single. Carter Combs says the same thing. I don't know, you tell me. I do not care one bit about those two. I care about finding out the truth of how Noah was murdered. So only things that are relevant to that matter to me. It's funny how the family thinks they're all some sort of fascination. Wait, what's this? It's funny how the family... What, the family of Noah Presgrove thinks they are some sort of fascination? It's Noah we want to know about. It's Noah we care about, period. Is it only Americans that say period, the word? I wonder. But yeah, just to answer icy worldliness, Jack Newton, Carter Combs have supposedly broken up and they have deleted photos of one another on their main Facebook pages. And it was said around town in Terrell, or somewhere around that place, that the wedding has been called off as well. So at the time of the party in 2023, Jack Newton, Carter Combs' boyfriend, girlfriend, when it came to, I think, February 2024, they became engaged, a fiancé, that type of situation, in preparation for the wedding as time followed on. And ever since, the wedding has been called off. So it looks like they have parted ways. But Jack Newton, I don't know about Jack Newton actually, but at least Carter Combs has 2 additional Facebook accounts, which is a bit dodgy. And on one of the alternative Facebook accounts, could be a default profile as well, hiding the face, still friends with Jack Newton. Yet, on the main Facebook page, Jack Newton, Carter Combs have unfriended one another, but they're still friends on an alternative account. So was it a publicity stunt, maybe? Misdirection? You never know. And the reason why it's important to the Noah Presgrove case is, if for whatever reason Jack Newton or Carter Combs knew something about one another, the moment they break up and fall out with one another, the other could grass on them, right? Within the case, possibly. Genuine. These are reposts that she posted. I think that's grasping for straws when you look at what someone repost. Geez, who can think about that nonsense a month after your friend died? She told the police that she barely knew Noah. I mean, it is interesting, isn't it? These were posted before Noah's passing. Before. For some reason, it won't let me edit. Oh no. It's a good thing I've not titled this video a certain way. Who's CC, the party host sister, may or may not be engaged to Noah's supposed best friend. So we go back to the top. I said it was only going to be a brief look. So you're saying within 1 month of Noah's passing, did you meant to say 1 month before Noah's passing? If that was the case, you're implying that she had eyes on another guy, such as Noah Presgrove then, before the death. And that if Jack found out about that fantasy or that focus where Carter Combs liked Noah behind the background and was flirting at the party, did Jack put an end to it then to prevent that love triangle? I'd have to disagree on that basis, because if it was true that Noah was flirting, such as with Carter Combs at the party, and then after that shower, 3 in the morning onwards at least, and possibly before 3:30, wanting to sleep in one of the girls' bedrooms, and supposedly with Carter Combs in bed or on the floor, and it was kind of rejected and turned down by Carter Combs. And we're saying here that Carter Combs may have liked Noah, and that's why there was reposting photos to remind her of him before or after the death. Then why would Carter Combs have rejected the offer by Noah then, if they had that time by themselves at the party to do whatever? And yeah, if it was turned down by Carter, then it kind of dispels it all and goes against this idea. I said, this poster said it's just speculation. Maybe these are the type of examples where you might look a bit too deep into something when there's nothing there, but there's no harm in just briefly looking over it. The main focus of this video was the autopsy. Granted, from yesterday when it came to that TikTok post of Renee Milan reposting a video created by one of the sisters, I think Jade, who then may have recorded her sister and Noah kissing one another, like some kind of weird get-together picnic time or something. I don't know what the hell's going on there, but, you know, there's questions with that as well. Why would it be reposted afterwards, and why would the mother post it then? It's like a little intimate moment kissing. I don't know, maybe people have different mindsets, mentalities there. I'm not small or anything, it's just because I've got the camera a bit higher up, so I've got to stand up a bit higher too, in case people are wondering, the door behind depth of field and the camera pointing slightly upwards, okay? But when it came to that kissing video, there was some people at the time saying, oh, that's Jasmine Milan's mom. Wasn't. It was quite easy to tell, but, you know, things like that, little mistakes, errors along the way, no harm. I'll just try and clear it up along the way. Just like how some people might clear it up when I make the odd mistake along the way. It is what it is. I think we'll leave it there for now. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and this was long enough. I just thought I'd include this other little element, only because it was very small and short. It does come across the theme though in general of, what about all the other social media accounts and profiles? Where are they at? What are they doing? Any post, any repost, anything odd, suspicious, or would it have been removed by now? With that talk of the party goers, some of which removing stuff at the time probably wouldn't be able to get a hold of now. Some people are saying in the comments recently that the house needs searching, but unfortunately, with all the time that's passed by, people come and gone and clean the house in general, there probably wouldn't be anything left right now. So, you know, missed opportunity, you could argue. I think so. We'll see what happens around the corner. With what the expert has said today from their knowledge and their own individual experience, and possibly ruling out a beating and golf clubs, I'm still going to take a look at the golf clubs probably tomorrow, providing there's no other news or obstacles along the way. And I'll see you there. For now, goodbye, good night.